the session started on time, and so let me just start by saying good morning to everybody, welcoming you all to this very special session. Excellencies, distinguished delegates and participants, and all of you following us online through the Summit's virtual engagement platform. It's a great pleasure to have you here all. My name is Oscar Fernandez Taranco. I am the UN Assistant Secretary General for Development Cooperation. I am delighted to welcome you to this spotlight session on effective multilateral support at the country level, co-prepared with the World Health Organization and the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation. Let me also start by saying that the full impact of the pandemic on our development effort is only now beginning to reveal itself. And we are yet confronted with another major conflict threatening the food, economic supply chains, and all of this is compounded by the ongoing fallout of the climate crisis with disastrous consequences for millions. And for the first time in 32 years, the human developments have declined for 2 years in a row. Meanwhile, the SDG financing gap, which has widened from 2.5 to at least 3.9 trillion per year since the pandemic, is now estimated to increase to some US $400 billion per year between now and 2025. So at this juncture, redoubling our efforts to support our multilateral system, ensuring that the limited resources available are deployed effectively to support the Sustainable Development Goals and eventually benefit all of us, must be the priority. Ensuring that the UN, the international financial institutions, the multilateral development banks are coordinating and playing to their advantages within this partnership is crucial, it's essential. For this, we must maintain a principle-led, evidence-based dialogue on development cooperation. This is the essence of the global partnership and a core objective of the reformed UN development system. We need to focus on how we work together and build trust through these challenges. We need more than ever an effective multilateral system. And so we are gathered here today to discuss what this will take and what all of us can do to fully play our part in strengthening the effectiveness of the system. And we have here today a lineup of great speakers. Let me start by introducing the ones who are present here today with us in the room. And as I call their names, to ask them to please join me up here on the stage, starting with Ms. Marie Ottosson, who's the SIDA Deputy Director General and the incoming GPEG co-chair. Thank you and welcome. Mr. Krishna Hari Pushkar, who's the Finance Secretary in the Ministry of Finance of Nepal. Mrs. Monica Asuma, who's the Director of Planning, Head of the Development Effectiveness Secretariat from the National Territory of Kenya. Mrs. Biljana Spasvowska, who's the Executive Director of the Balkan Civil Society Development Network. And also important, and joining us virtually, is Dr. Wayne Henry, who's the Chairman and Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica. Welcome, sir. I know it's very early in the morning for you, but great to have you here. And also Ms. Diana Saleh, who's our Regional Director of the Near East, North Africa, Europe, and Central Asia Division at IFAD in Rome. So welcome. And so we have a lot to discuss. So again, I would encourage all of you to stick as much as possible to the 4-minute limit, because we have a lot of also people joining us here, and we would like this session to be as interactive as possible. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Marie Ottosson to the podium to deliver a keynote address. So please welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the multiple crises these last years have amplified the pressure on people, prosperity, peace, and the planet. And the war in Ukraine has pointed how complex and interrelated we are, resulting in global energy crisis and food crisis. And reports from IMF, the World Bank, and the UN that shows us that the economy is slowing down and the progress of human development has stagnated, resulting in an increased share of people living in multidimensional poverty, which was also emphasized by the Assistant Secretary General. But as we speak and meet today, we are facing unprecedented climate catastrophes, and more people than ever are in need for humanitarian aid. Regrettably, the grim picture coincides with a situation when resources, including ODA, are constrained. The multilateral development system has never been as needed and at the same time as challenged. We need more than ever the discussion on development effectiveness, financing for development, and what this can mean for multilateral collaboration and support to countries. And building on previous experiences, we have all seen how the COVID-19 pandemic forced the multilateral system to come together, to coordinate, and to successfully deliver in a concerted way. So to set the scene, I would like to draw attention to GPEDC synergies to the multilateral processes. At country level, the UN reform process is contributing to development effectiveness, included by the UN alignment to country priorities and ownership, results for achieving Agenda 2030, accountability and transparency. And I would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate UNDCO's newly appointed director, Oscar Fernandez Taranco, who will take the UN reform process to the next level. We wish you the very best leading this important endeavor, and we are looking forward to a close cooperation and exchange between the GPEDC and DCO. In parallel with Sweden taking over the co-chair for GPEDC, we will also hold the EU presidency during the first half of 2023. And a substantial part of the EU development assistance is also implemented by multilateral partners. A focus for the Swedish presidency will be to ensure that the development, that the development impact of the EU support effectively contributes to sustainable and locally owned development. So, dear colleagues, moving forward is an absolutely critical to stay firm on our commitment of leaving no one behind. It will require a concerted and coordinated engagement of a range of actors in each country. And GPEDC can contribute to enhancing the dialogue of the effectiveness principles and each and everyone's comparative advantage, with the aim of using our resources as effectively as possible. And it is clear that effective multilateral partnerships require enhanced collaboration between the UN, the IFIs, and the EU. So to summarize it, we all have to work together. But these actors that I mentioned, they all have a unique role as partners to government, but also to ensure an inclusive multi-stakeholder participation to enhance the pace to achieve the SDGs and our climate commitments. Furthermore, with the understanding that we have to continue to manage multiple crises in the years to come, it is also evident that we need to join forces. We need to enhance our collaboration and coordination across the humanitarian, development, and peace nexus. So finally, it gives me great pleasure to open this session, and I am very, very much looking forward to our common efforts today and in the future, when it comes to increasing the effectiveness of multilateral partnerships for better delivering towards the Agenda 2030 and to stand strong in times of crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Ottosson, for helping us set the scene for this discussion today. And again, a central construct of the reform of the UN development system is, in essence, actually development effectiveness in action. And so, again, and we do commit ourselves to be working closely with all of you in strong partnerships. So now let me turn to the rest of the panel, and starting with Mr. Pushkar, to ask him how can specific initiatives, when the system is effective and is aligned to country priorities and delivering as one, how can it contribute to accelerating the 2030 agenda? If you wish, yes.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, fellow panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be with you as a part of this Effective Development Cooperation Summit. The GPDC remains instrumental in bringing together those commitments to enhancing effective partnerships. Nepal is honored to share our perspectives on the multilateral system and the role of GPDC can play in helping to improve this system's capacity to respond to the multiple challenges in our time. Nepal believes that a robust multilateral system remains in our best interest and indeed the best interest of all countries. In today's increasingly interdependent, polarized and uncertain world, in these uncertain times, there remain areas which can and therefore must work better together in cooperation rather than competition. Undoubtedly, these few years have shown global public health to be one such area. Despite placing tremendous stress upon the global economy and people's livelihoods, the COVID-19 pandemic has reinforced the significance of multilateral approaches. So was the case with recovery from devastating earthquake back in 2015. Nepal was among the first countries in Asia to receive COVID-19 vaccine via the COVAX multi-partner vaccine platform, making a significant contribution to the government's effort to vaccinate those most vulnerable, ensuring none were left behind in alignment with the Nepal's development and vaccination plan. In forging new partnership, we benefited from exchanges in scientific expertise, medical supplies, procurement, and the distribution of much-needed vaccines. This cooperation enabled us to fully vaccinate over 80% of our population and allowed us to begin administering booster shot in January this year. The WHO has recognized Nepal's exemplary efforts in ensuring vaccine quality equity, helping protect communities that might otherwise have been overlooked. Integrated Health Management Information System is another example demonstrating the value of multilateral cooperation in Nepal. HMIS serves as a backbone for managing information on health service delivery, including vaccination. The system tremendously supported our COVID-19 response, developed with the support of multi-stakeholders, including the government of Nepal, development partners, and civil society. The system stands as a compelling example of contemporary multilateral approaches to addressing complex development challenges. We will continue to rely on multilateral support system to strengthen our capacity to respond to future pandemics. Nepal has successfully implemented sector-wide approaches of funding in education, health, public financial management, and provincial and local governance sectors. Nepal has reformed its commitment to achieve SDGs across many important policy documents, including Periodic Development Plan, 25-year long-term vision, and the subsequent exercises towards identifying status, roadmap, costing, and financing strategy of SDGs. In the health sector, infant mortality, maternal mortality, and child mortality rates have been reduced. 3 decades ago, an average of 900 mothers in every 100,000 died during the childbirth. By 2016, the figure had fallen to 239. Our remarkable progress over the past 30 years is testament to our embrace of multilateral partnership. Allow me to offer another example. Nepal 5-year health strategy aims to ensure that all Nepalis have access to high-quality health care. As a part of this strategy, we seek to decentralize our health system while strengthening primary health care services. However, significant challenges includes maintaining our health workforce, minimizing out-of-pocket expenditures, and improving health governance and information systems. To address these challenges, Nepal was one of the first countries to implement SDG 3 Global Action Plan GAP, launched by the Prime Minister in New York in September 2019. Progress achieved by the GAP ranges from strengthening routine data sources, vital statistics, and population-based surveys to capacity building on data management at national and sub-national level, helping to strengthen the autonomy of sub-national decision makers and allowing the planning of health intervention for those most in need. Nepal continues to recognize the GAP as a unique opportunity for a new kind of collaboration that brings together the expertise of various agencies and stakeholders to focus on critical national health priorities. As each year passes, new and seemingly more formidable obstacles appear, be it growing global inequality or global pandemic response or the challenges on our own existence posed by climate change. We are aware that we can overcome these obstacles only through multilateral, multi-stakeholders, collective action. Accordingly, Nepal seeks to ramp up access to funds via international climate finance windows, part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In Nepal, our responses also includes a range of robust measures promoting green, resilient, and inclusive development grid, fighting the devastating impacts of climate change, and meeting financial commitment associated with our implementation of the Paris Agreement and our recently submitted admitted ambitious nationally determined contribution NDC that plans to decarbonize our economy in all sectors. Nepal will continue to support effective multilateralism, exhibiting our commitment to strengthening and sustaining our shared aspirations for a more peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Now is the time to build a more robust, interconnected, aligned, and inclusive multilateral system grounded in cooperation, solidarity, and mutual trust. Let's continue this spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puchar. You know, as you mentioned, strengthening the data sources so that we're able to measure progress against the SDGs is definitely going to be one of the key asks of the SDG summit that is coming up next year. So thank you for sharing the experience of Nepal with all of us. And let me now turn the floor to Dr. Henry, again, who's joining us virtually. Very early hours in Jamaica, sir. Thank you for joining us. And as a partner country governments here play a crucial role in enabling and unlocking the effectiveness of the multilateral system, ensuring that the agendas are being set and aligned to their most pressing priorities through, again, the sustained leadership and active participation. So the question is, what actions can they undertake to promote country-led development processes and build space for inclusive engagement? Dr. Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Oscar. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Multilateralism speaks to an arrangement between partners under established principles and frameworks that provide assurance of collaboration around agreed development goals in order to resolve those issues at the country level. The actions to promote country-led development processes and inclusive engagement can be observed through 5 broad areas. 1, improved management of the project design phase. It is important for countries to be targeted and standardized in the approach across development partners when engaging the project design phase. And this will facilitate the development of a clear theory of change to realize a pathway to the results envisioned based on rigorously analyzed issues within the specified project period, a proper stakeholder analysis being conducted, which allows for clear considerations of inclusivity, improved management of multi-stakeholder development processes and projects which require a deeper level of integration and coordination to accomplish results, and necessary market sounding to acquire an understanding of the expertise available, particularly locally, and completion of a design evaluation where necessary as a part of the project appraisal process to determine the feasibility of implementing a particular initiative or the need to adjust the theory of change, and use of a data-driven decision-making process, including baseline research and pre-investment feasibility studies. 2, improved management of the mobilization and securing of scarce resources within short timelines. Important factors include to improve the application of resource mobilization through decisions driven by country-led timelines and priorities determined by the capacity and context of the partner country, and leverage the resources of the private sector to scale initiatives funded by multilateral partners as a means to expand on investments and build internal mechanisms through public-private partnerships, which assist to reduce investment borrowing. 3, improved coordination amongst international development partners, IDPs. This can be achieved through country-led mechanisms. The Planning Institute of Jamaica, through its External Cooperation Management Division, coordinates the work of all external partners to ensure alignment with national priorities and the delivery of projects according to established country standards. And this includes engaging donors in coordination meetings each year, which assist with open dialogue between IDPs and reduces duplication. Also, in-country processes, such as the system led by Jamaica's Vision 2030 National Development Plan, provide a space for structured dialogue with external partners on the basis of a prioritized set of issues and established rules and roles and responsibilities. 4, improved local capacities to manage development processes. This can be ensured through, inter alia, an agreed standard between IDPs and beneficiary countries for the assessment of the institutional capacity of government based on country-sensitive criteria, and appointing country focal points to co-lead the process of execution, especially for IDP-executed initiatives. This is also a means to sustainability. And 5, monitoring and evaluation and use of data for decision-making. It is also important to develop a standardized country results-based monitoring, evaluation, and learning system that captures data, tracks and connects development targets at all levels, allows for the effective and efficient costing of sector plans, and the use of the recommendations resulting from project implementation. This will create an institutionalized mechanism to collect data, observe trends across development projects, and make evidence-based decisions to better program scarce resources and to identify the scalability of priority development areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. Very pointed observations in the short time span that we have. So first of all, to acknowledge that and to recap the importance of theory of change and inclusiveness, the importance of leveraging private sector, the importance of aligning financial frameworks, funding modalities to national processes and priorities so that structured dialogues can be held, the importance of building local capacities, and finally, the importance of data through monitoring and evaluation mechanisms that can inform decision-making. Very, very pointed and very much to the heart of many of the discussions that are happening here. So thank you for that. And let me now turn to Ms. Asuna and ask her to reflect on the importance of the predictability of funding and the focus on results to ensure that systems can deliver as one. So the question is, how are the effectiveness principles that this conference is so much relying and focusing of country ownership, focusing on results, inclusive partnerships, and mutual accountability and transparency, how is it being driven by the funding modalities and the Kenya experience in this regard? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, everyone. Let me just start by giving just a brief scenario of the multilateral support that Kenya receives. So Kenya receives multilateral support from diverse sources, the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, and also from the the Middle East countries like the OPEC, Kuwait Fund, the Saudi Fund, and also the Arab Bank for Reconstruction and Development, BADEA, and also the UN agencies, and also the EU delegation. So out of this, the heavy portfolio is usually the World Bank, IMF, and African Development Bank, which is mixed with, credit with some grant elements. And most of this support is program-based, except for a few cases from the IMF, World Bank, which is of a policy reform nature. So currently, Kenya is implementing the Development Policy Operations 5, which is reforms geared towards government ministries. And this takes also the country ownership, because these policy reform areas are agreed on between the World Bank, IMF, and the government. So it is not like driven by the World Bank and IMF, but jointly agreed. So it takes country ownership of this, and also they're aligned to these principles, because it is where we want the resources directed. So in terms of the UN funding, if I may quickly talk about that, we all know that member states have been calling for the harmonization of the UN from 1997 until we came to the delivering as one. So Kenya from 2012 implemented the first development assistance framework of the UN under the first delivering as one, aligned to the medium-term plan of Kenya, which is 5-year programs. Currently, we are developing the third generation of the delivering as one under the cooperation framework, and it's about to be finalized, not fully finalized. So Kenya being home also to 24 UN agencies who are resident in Kenya, coordination becomes a challenge. Therefore, harmonization is really important to us as a government, because you find that, for example, I'm the one in charge of UN, agencies at the country level in terms of the partnership between government and the UN agencies. So coordinating 24 agencies at the country level in a silo approach, each coming with their funding and various programs, becomes a challenge. So the delivering as one is really critical if the UN has to create impact and also reduce transaction costs to government in terms of time that we engage in terms of coordination. So the delivering as one in country, at the country level, has worked through the one program, the one office. We have the resident coordinator's office, the one communication, and also, the one communication, and also one area that has not worked well is the one fund. And I think that is the area where, if we recall in the opening statement of the day, the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed on Monday, where she said that UN funding has to act as one. So I think that is where the one fund comes in. And that is where, if the UN going forward at the country level can really come up with more of joint programs, where quite a number of UN agencies come and deliver a one program approach, a joint program approach, it will really help governments in terms of harmonization. And just to talk about also in terms of the UN funding compact, I presume most member states maybe have been invited maybe to, and the revised assessed contributions in terms of scaling up to reach the 30% that was agreed on by member states. So Kenya has been, received some communication. The government has committed to scaling up our accessed contributions. Where the assessed contribution is a bit heavy, for example, the agreement with the WHO is to scale up to 2026. So gradual scaling up of this contribution up to 2026, and also based on, based on also the country economic status, like for us being a lower middle income status, so our assessed contribution is a bit higher. So the government has committed to that. So what do we need then from the UN, from those commitments, member states? More effectiveness of the UN, implementation of programs at the country level. What I've mentioned about more program-based, more transparency and accountability of the UN. The UN has to really really stop the silo approach and also seeking visibility and act as one. So thank you. I may stop there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Asante sana. I think this was a strong call for harmonization, transparency, accountability, and the central aspect of aligning programming to national priorities and the construct and the importance of pooled funding mechanisms to incentivize joint action, joint programming, to increase transparency, accountability, effectiveness, and to stop the types of silos. And thank you very much. I know that as a recipient of the support of 24 UN agencies, funds, and programs, this is the challenge, is harmonizing and reducing transaction costs, which is very much at the heart of the UN, the reform of the UN development system launched by the Secretary General. So thank you for that testimonial coming from Kenya. So now let me turn to our colleague Dina Saleh, who's joining us from Rome, from IFAD. The evidence from the literature and experiences at the country level show how strengthened alignment and effective collaboration across the development partners, including the international financial institutions, can effectively accelerate progress at the country level. So from the perspective of IFAD, which is both a UN agency and an international financial institution, what are the key mechanisms, instruments, and incentives that the multilateral system can use to drive alignment and collaboration across partners to achieve tangible results on the ground? Over to you, Dina.
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Oscar, and let me first also join my colleagues to congratulate you on your new appointment and to wish you the best in your mandate. Also to thank the organizers for inviting the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, to this very important dialogue. It is my pleasure to join you on behalf of the IFAD president, who was unable to join this panel today as he's chairing the executive board as we speak. So let me go straight to the points that you raised, Oscar. The compounding issues of COVID-19 and the Ukraine crisis, the climate shocks, is a stark reminder of the urgency of collective action. And as we've just heard from the speakers before me, there is, we have, let's say, for a long time, collaborated in an opportunistic manner. And I think the time now has changed and the tide has changed for all partners to really work together and to look at the complementarities that we can bring. So partnerships for us is crucial at IFAD to get to grips with the complex, rapidly changing issues that are relative to agriculture and rural development. And this is a necessity for us if we are to achieve greater outreach and the development impact in terms of rural poverty reduction with the limited resources that exist. So we are at IFAD, we're a strong supporter of donor coordination, and this is incorporated in IFAD's business model. As you said, initially, we are a UN specialized agency, but also an international financing institution. And we find this really puts us at a vantage point where we can bring these very important, organizational business models together, really to drive the cooperation framework and to be able also to address the needs of many of the clients and the country partners. So how is it incorporated in IFAD's business model? The first is we work through local government. And I think that was the point also made by Dr. Henry. Working through local government ensures full ownership of all the activities and the investments. I think also Dr. Asuna was referring to that, and I can fully relate to her points about trying to manage all these institutions that try to drive, their own, let's say, agendas. So this is working through local governments is the first effective way to making sure that all both the multilaterals, the financing institutions, the UN are coordinated. But there's another challenge to this as well, is the local coordination at government level. The line ministries is another area that needs to also be brought together. So it's very important for us to work with all stakeholders and involve them from an early stage And what we do, which is embedded in our business model, is bringing in all stakeholders at the formulation of the country strategies. So this is one point. And then, of course, going into the designs of that is another element. The second is that IFAD sits, because of our UN also sort of mandate, we sit with the UN country levels, the UNCTs at country level, to also to ensure strong coordination and bring also the perspectives and the vision of the IFIs and the MDBs to the UN space. The third area where we work as IFAD is also coordinating with a global network of partners. And here, for those of you who don't know, IFAD currently is hosting the secretariat of the Global Donor Platform for Rural Development. We've been doing that for the last 2 years. And I think this is an important space where global partners working towards rural development can also convene and share and coordinate the ideas and their development plans. Lastly, I wanted, because I know time is short, but I really would like to emphasize one point, and that is working through civil society, such as farmers' organizations. And here we found that working with indigenous peoples and the indigenous peoples forums through concrete operations that directly strengthen what we call our target groups, so IFAD's target groups, we have the opportunity to listen to the challenges directly from the ground at country level, and then to channel climate finance or other financing directly to those who need it most. Now, in climate finance, I think the advantage, and as you said, the incentives for MDBs and IFIs to collaborate, one important element to bring to this discussion is the blended finance approach. Because we do find, in some cases, IFAD would finance what we call the soft elements, so the soft activities, the capacity building, the community mobilization, the bringing the aggregation and the farmers groups together. And you would find other MDBs and IFIs like the World Bank and African Development Bank who would invest in the infrastructure, the heart of finance. So here, bringing the partners together and collaborating on complementary space, I think is really important. And this is what we do as an incentive. We bring this to the discussion. We bring the evidence as well to the table, showing our comparative advantages. And here we can also, I'm sure, make a very strong case for why it's important for also country governments such as Kenya, but also others to use this to their advantage, to see what are the different, strengths that we can all bring to the table. Now, one other important thing to mention also is the risk mitigations, bringing the point of leveraging the private sector. The private sector wants to have bankable operations. They want to have de-risked operations. And here's where the IFIs and the MDBs play a strong role of de-risking operations and bringing risk mitigating instruments. We have several instruments, wide range of instruments, financing, which is direct loans. We have supplementary agreements with bilateral donors. We have grant agreements. We have institutional partner agreements. So there's a wide range of partnerships that we as IFIs can bring to the table in order to ensure effective coordination and collaboration. So if you allow me with one last example, which I think is crucial to bring to this discussion today, IFAD was recently selected by the government of Egypt to lead a multi-billion nexus of water, food, and energy. The food pillar that IFAD will be leading is expected to build a strategic vision for the agriculture sector and support the government in mobilizing financial and technical resources for projects. African Development Bank will lead the water pillar, and EBRD will lead the energy pillar. For us, this is an important flagship program for effective donor coordination, meaning that anybody who would like to invest in the water, food, or energy sectors will have to go through this coordination mechanism, which is exclusively driven by government, and they have already shaped the framework of interventions. They have shaped the concept itself, and we are there now to leverage and assemble the financing as well as leverage the crowd in the private sector and bring in the different partners around the same space, including the UN. And I thought this is an important example to give because when we talk of donor coordination, it's important to put governments on the driving seat. I'll stop there. I know I was a bit long-winded, but thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Dina. I mean, fascinating examples and a lot of food for thought, and just, again, how crucial it is that in this whole construct of the principles of development effectiveness, this aspect of changing our business models, changing our behaviors and culture, and aligning much more around the needs and priorities, and really make inclusive partnerships a reality. How important your contribution is as member of UN country teams to bring in the international financial institutions' perspective and dynamics and considerations when the country team is organizing itself to support national priorities. And this fascinating example that you gave on how to work with local civil society organizations, in particular indigenous peoples organizations and forums, and this combination of hard and soft finance and really adaptation to the realities, to the capacities, to the abilities to mobilize these very dynamic partnerships. You mentioned the private sector, but again, a lot of really good examples. Thank you for that. And it actually gives us a great segue to the role of civil society organizations here and their very important participation in this forum and in this policy space. Turning to Mrs. Spasvoska. You know, civil societies have been at the forefront of these development efforts on the ground as vital partners to realize the SDGs. I understand that when the GPEC last met at the highest level back in 2016, there was a lot of discussion about the role of civil societies, the importance of civil society engagement. And yet, however, since the past 6 years, it seems that the conditions affecting civil society's contribution to development have deteriorated, that the space for participation has shrunk, and that your role is now more difficult than it was several years ago. So from your perspective, what is the role of the multilateral system in strengthening and enabling and enhancing the voice and participation of civil society organizations and participants, and how can these organizations actually in turn help enhance the effectiveness of the system, the transparency of it, and its accountability? So over to you.
Thank you so much for such a timely and relevant question. Indeed, I think the multilaterals have a very crucial role to play when it comes to enabling the civil society organizations to contribute and to be the development actors they are, in fact. And this role is not sufficiently used up till now. I think, like on paper, civil society organizations are very much recognized. However, there's significant room for improvement there when it comes to what the multilaterals can do. And I've put several examples what concrete actions they can take. So the first one would be the opening the space for the civil society organizations and giving them or demanding they have a seat on the table in policy and decision-making processes. Although this cannot be possible in all of the countries, there are many countries that the multilaterals are positioned enough so they can request the civil society involvement in these important processes. And I have several examples, for example, coming from the Balkans, of how this has been put in effect in our countries. For example, the UN team in Serbia really created this space for engaging and bringing civil society organizations in very important policy-making processes when it comes to freedom of expression, for example, when it comes to a right to access to information, and very concrete issues that otherwise maybe the other stakeholders who want the civil society to be out. The second thing is to involve them in the data gathering. So the civil society organizations are those working on the ground. They have the data, they can support the evidence, they already do evidence-based advocacy, and this needs to be utilized also by multilaterals. The third thing is invest in the civil society capacity. So multilaterals as well have the responsibility to invest in the civil society organizations and the civil society itself, because this is a way to ensure that there is an ownership of these development processes and reforms taking place at the country level. But most importantly, I think they should be they should lead by example. So they have to make efforts to be more inclusive and more accountable when it comes to the civil society organizations and the civil society sector, in how they can be part of the programming processes, in the monitoring and implementation, in the implementation and the monitoring of the development, enhancing the development effectiveness particularly. Lastly, join their civil society advocacy efforts. Again, there has been several very good examples from the Balkans, but also from the other regions as well, where civil society, where multilaterals, UN agencies, but also others have joined forces with the civil society to demand more accountable governance, more accountable leadership, and broader involvement of all stakeholders, so not only on the civil society organizations. And I think with now the momentum for locally led and locally owned development, this is something that multilaterals also need to invest more efforts in this agenda. And we have until like many bilaterals have already declared their commitment for investing more in locally led development. We have the INGO sector as well, pledging for change to be more accountable and more locally grounded in their efforts on how they operate. So I think also the multilaterals have need to push in that front. And one of the things that can be very useful, for example, is the OECD DAC recommendation on enabling the civil society, which can also be a resource for the multilaterals can use on how to implement these concrete steps. Other tools, of course, exist. For example, the EU has their own guidelines for how to support civil society in third countries, which is also very valuable tool. So there are several resources, and they're very useful, and we would really like to see put them in use by multilaterals as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Biljana. Very much on target, and thank you for timekeeping because it is allowing us to get through. But just I think you made very important points, and because I did mention the evidence showing that there has been less space for civil society organizations, this is a crucial construct of the concept of inclusive partnerships, right? Inclusive meaning the multiple stakeholders that need to be involved, that need to assume ownership. So here again, the importance of ensuring that proactively we look and create space for the participation, the active participation and voice of civil society to improve and enhance policy decision-making, impact, and putting people at the center of a lot of the decisions that are being made. The importance of also being partners in data gathering. This is a very important part of the rollout of some of the monitoring exercises that are going to be the product of part of the outcome document of this summit conference. The importance of investing in capacities, the importance, of course, of involvement both in programming and monitoring and implementation of programs, which requires to ensure that we have more flexible policies and guidelines to be able to engage as strategic partners, of course, civil societies in the contexts where this is available and opportune to do. And then lastly, to ensure that as a process of this inclusive partnership, that we're also enhancing the transparency and accountability and improved and accountable governance as well. So thank you for these very important points. We are having just 10 minutes left to this session, but I'm very happy because I was worried we wouldn't get also to the part where we would again reflect on the evidence, on trends that our colleagues and friends, I'd like to invite Mr. Per Knudsen, the Deputy Executive Director of the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation, to share the overview of what is happening with the funding trends today, so that we know what we're talking about and can we collectively be addressing some of these positive but some of the worrying trends as well. So Per, the floor over to you.
Thank you, Oscar, and distinguished colleagues. I will try to, in the interest of time, interest you in two reports that we do together with partners on multilateral effectiveness. And they are really speaking to what all the presenters have been speaking on today. If it is the results we expect that will guide our modalities, our strategic choices, then global commitments on quality funding for scaling results must be lived by each and every one. It must be a shared responsibility, and it cannot be applied whenever it suits us. With those words, I would like to flag the first report, which we do. The Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation does this for the 8th year in a row, together with the Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office under the leadership of Jennifer Topping, Executive Coordinator, who's sitting there in the audience. And we're doing this to map out for all of you the financial flows through the UN development system, to give a common reference ground to what does financing look like when we are addressing effectiveness. The second part of this report, which you can access on the resource site, is looking, has a marketplace on innovative ideas on transformation. How can we move from where we are now to the next level? The second report, which you will find on the net, is called Way Forward. And if this looks at financial flows, the Way Forward looks at our financial behaviors, the funding patterns at the country level. My team has done conversations, 70 conversations in 8 countries across 4 continents in the past 1.5 years. And I have to say that against a uniform background of speakers looking for more coherent and joined-up approaches to really punch the bigger results, addressing resilience, humanitarian crisis, conflict prevention, there is no doubt that we cannot do that by ourselves. There is no agency that can fulfill those objectives, and there is no donor that can reach those goals. And yet, if you look into that report, the Way Forward report, I would say fragmentation is galloping, and it is undermining the public expenditure into the results that we want to see. When you look at global commitments and how they are realized at the local level, I would say that the responsibility are with donors and member states much more than it is with the UN system. Why is that? When you look at the scorecards on the member states decided UN reform to bring together country priorities and global standards, the UN has taken a great number of steps to accommodate those global commitments, while funding is actually driving continued project fragmentation, and there is need to coordinate resources, blend competences, and integrate mandates to punch at a bigger level. So what is the solution then? This is not a responsibility only on donors. It's, of course, the traction between agency marching orders to fulfill the responsibilities of mandates when core funding is going down, at the same time delivering together as a UN system or as part of a multilateral system, effectively bringing results to the country level. Based on the findings in these reports, I would say that there is scope for host country leadership, UN, IFIs and the bilaterals to look at where are the 4 or 5 big ones that we need, that we share analysis, and where that can be examples and vehicles for leveraging and improving results for poor people, and learning from that. And indeed, the opportunities out there, the resources still available, the modalities on multi-partner trust funds and pooled funding mechanisms are there, and there are positive examples that bring higher results. My last point is on visibility and reporting. There is a mutual accountability on reporting, and there is a demand for visibility. If that demand and expectation is geared towards attributed reporting, whereby member states or agencies report on projects or activities, rather than acknowledging how partners collectively contribute to higher and more effective results, the reporting and visibility criteria can undermine effectiveness. I hope you can access these reports, and thank you for adding a little bit of provocative spice into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Per. An excellent report, and I do hope that everybody here and many who are participating get a chance to read it, because we keep talking about performance and reporting and data, and so the data is speaking very loudly here. We're going in reverse direction of where we need to be going, and certainly the whole development effectiveness agenda is about fighting fragmentation and bringing much more unity of purpose and clarity and jointness in the work we're doing, and funding and financing are key constructs of how we either come together or continue the fragmentation that no government really is interested in getting. So with this, let me turn quickly also to Isadora Quick, who's our technical officer at the Secretariat of the Global Action Plan for Healthy Lives and Well-Being for All in WHO, who will give us a quick update on the monitoring framework of the SDG 3 Global Action Plan. The floor is yours, and we're running out of time almost, but thank you for being able to present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for the opportunity. So I'll give an example from the health sector. The Global Action Plan for Healthy Lives and Well-Being for All, or SDG 3 Global Action Plan, is a collaboration initiative among 13 multilateral agencies active in health, UN and non-UN, so including funding agencies. It embodies, of course, the effectiveness principles as it aims to help countries accelerate progress towards health-related SDGs through closer collaboration among development partners. And it is also very much aligned to the objectives of the UN reform, of course. The main focus of the SDG 3 Global Action Plan is to enhance the way the multilaterals provide their support to countries through closer collaboration. And as part of the way we monitor how the SDG 3 Global Action Plan is implemented, we have developed a tool whereby we ask governments through a very simple, short and annual questionnaires what their perspective is on two main issues. The first one is how well development partners align to their national plans. And the second one is how well do development partners actually collaborate with each other. And this tool allows governments to rate the alignment and the collaboration, highlight the challenges they face, but also provide some useful and concrete suggestions to improve the way we work together at country level. And for those who are interested, this year's progress report presents the initial data. We have presented it as a heat map, so it's very visual, and it represents basically the perspectives of the governments who have provided their feedback, and we plan on doing it annually. So we anticipate that this tool really provides useful feedback for the UN country teams and development partners more generally, and will increase the incentives for closer collaboration. We know that governments play a very essential role in creating these incentives for effective cooperation. And we hope, of course, that thereby this will help to accelerate progress to the health-related SDGs and achieve health for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isadora. And really, let me thank all the speakers. I mean, I think it's a concrete outcome of development effectiveness that we had 8 speakers in 1 hour. Actually, give very, very focused. So, a big round of applause for all the speakers. I just want to, with very few comments. We only have 1 minute left, but just the centrality of the shift of business models and behaviors within our respective organizations composing the multilateral system. The importance of all of us walking the talk. I mean, we come to many of these meetings and we say, we must, we must, we must. We keep writing papers, as some of us reminded, a lot of good things in paper which aren't translating into practice and into action. So again, not just walk the talk, but deliver on the commitments and the promises, as President Kagame said in the opening session. We make a lot of promises, but keep under-delivering on these promises. And finally, the need for all of us to be advocating and building a political commitment for quality funding, for quality results. We can't expect better results if the fragmentation that the report that Per was relating to keep driving agendas that are very much in the order of earmarking and small projects that certainly will not be delivering on the ambitions of the SDGs. This is most likely going to be one of the main conclusions of the summit of next year, is that the way we are working and the instruments that we have are just not fit for the purpose of the ambitions that member states themselves have signed up to. So this is the time to change the culture, to change the business models, and to accelerate the behavioral and cultural changes and the partnerships that are required to collectively deliver for we, the peoples of this world. So thank you very much for this. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you, and thank you all for participating and for listening, and I very much enjoyed this session. Thank you. Muy bien. On the dot.